Hi there, stars collectors, and welcome to another Bossk's Bounty video, and welcome to episode 258 of Ask Boss Bounty. This is the weekly Q&A series that drops every Sunday, where I take your questions from the comments and do my best to answer them. So if you do have a question for next week's episode and you want to be featured in the video, be sure to leave that question in the comments section of this video. We had some pretty awesome reveals on a Hasbro live stream, which aired in between last week's episode and this week's episode. So if you do have a question maybe about those reveals or what potentially could be coming out in the future to go alongside those, that would be pretty awesome. And just to let you know that this will be a ever so slightly shorter episode of Ask Boss Bounty this week. It feels like it's the first day of summer. The sun is shining. It's really nice and warm outside. It's also Mother's Day here in the UK. And yeah, I need to spend a bit of time with my wife and children today. So slightly shorter episode this week. But if you do enjoy it, hit the like button down below. Subscribe if you are new. And let's get on to the first question. Rob Bullock says, hi Tim, question for next week. Curious, for your own loose collection and displays, do you augment them in any way with customized 3D printed world building pieces? I've started with some of the less expensive items like cargo crates, doors, and my favourite recent purchase, the Yavin based sentry post that the Rebel Fleet Trooper watches the X-Wings depart for the Death Star from. I know the upcoming Tatooine Street set has some cool included items, but I can't see Hasbro offering these types of world building pieces at a rate and variety that most loose collectors would like. Yeah, absolutely. I feel that those pieces will only sort of come to us via playsets, just like the Streets of Tatooine has a few little pieces. But in answer to your question, yes, I do have some various pieces that are 3D printed. I mainly get them from Ian Butler 3D over here in the UK. You know, little things like this, little crates, little boxes. Got this one here, maybe that could go in Hoth, for example. We've got this pretty cool one here with some sort of coloured pieces on top, little barrel. And, you know, this one, sort of all very Star Wars-y looking pieces that are 3D printed and painted, but not painted by me, I might add. I need to buy them painted. I'm not really too good at painting things and things like that. But, you know, as I said, this would be just quite good to just place in Hoth, you know, in Echo Base or whatever. So that's kind of what I do. I don't really have any sort of 3D printed scenes necessarily, apart from maybe the Armourer's Forge was one that I got off Ian Butler. I do also have the Hoth turret as well, which is like half blown up. I think I've shown that in another video. But yeah, in terms of little pieces, yeah, you can find these dotted around my sort of little mini dioramas and things like that. Lieutenant Ketch says, question for next week. The newest TVC figures announced bring the lineup to VC 366, and it seems almost assured that we will reach VC 375 this year, with no number yet assigned to the new Han, Chewie or Ben. Do you think Hasbro will make it one of these three? Is there another figure you think would hold more significance to the legacy of 3.75 inch, Tarkin perhaps, or do you think they won't pick any figure special for that number? Thanks for all the great content and look forward to hearing your thoughts. So if you check out Mr. Stevie's checklist on his website, where he has those downloadable sort of posters, if you like, of all of the VC numbers, he does actually have VC 375 highlighted in red to note that it is a special number. I think he kind of realizes that. However, he made it red and people were then speculating what it would be. And he said that the color held no significance in his thoughts and that he actually might save VC 375 for the future. So he may even skip that number until he feels there is a special enough character for it. So that tells me that it is going to be a special character, hopefully. I would suggest that, you know, Han Solo on his original card back is a special enough character. You know, that would be a green name pill, so that definitely wouldn't, you know, coincide with the color that he has it on his like checklist poster thing. But as I said, he definitely did say that the color means nothing. But then again, you know, he's kind of tricked us before, isn't he? So we don't really know. But in answer to your question, in short, yes, VC 375 we hope is going to be a special character. And you know, too right too. Django Camino says, question for next week. What is the likelihood of TVC receiving a new Kit Fisto since the Black Series line has one, and the possibility of a Geonosian warrior and a pregnant Padme Amidala? Have a good week, Tim. Yeah, I'm not too sure about a pregnant Padme necessarily, but the other two do interest me quite a lot. Kit Fisto's a bit of a strange one, isn't it? Because we do already have that one in the line, and I wouldn't advise that they just reissue that one when it comes to that Black Series version, isn't it just a new head and hands on an existing Jedi body that they already had? I don't really know the answer to that question because I don't really follow the Black Series enough, but to me, when I look at that figure, I feel that they might have used that body before. So potentially, you know, if we get new Jedis in the line, then Kit Fisto would be a possibility, wouldn't it? Amongst other Jedis that potentially wear a similar outfit, and, you know, maybe there's minimal tooling that they need to do to create those characters. But the Geonosian Warrior is an interesting one, isn't it? Because we do have Jango, we do have Count Dooku. It would be pretty cool if we did get an update to this figure, because this one is, you know, it's not great. Let's face it. The articulation is not great. It only has the swivel hips. The legs are a bit funny. There's his wings, which are always pretty cool. And this one was from the Legacy Collection cancelled line, the sort of R2-D2 card backs. I think you could get him on another card back as well. But yeah, it would be great to get a newly tooled version of this to go with the new Jango. And then maybe also at the same time as giving us a new version of this one, they could do a new version of Poggle the Lesser as well, which I think the previous version we had from that was from the Saga collection, I want to say, which is a pretty decent looking figure. I mean, the sculpt's pretty good, but, you know, as always, it's lacking in articulation. And as I said, we've got Jango, we've got Dooku, so it'd be pretty cool to have some of these as well. Angel Para says, hello, I have a question. Which vehicle in your collection is your favorite that you currently own at the moment? It can be from any era of Star Wars. Also, do you have any plans to do a giveaway of any Star Wars items to the community? If so, when will this happen? I tend to do giveaways on my channel when I kind of hit like a milestone, and, you know, the next one might be a while away, unfortunately. But, you know, for my Patreon supporters and channel members, those sorts of giveaways are a lot more frequent. And in fact, I definitely need to do one for the first part of this year, and a live stream with those guys as well. But yeah, in terms of like the channel, a giveaway, who knows, man. But in terms of your other question, what is my favorite vehicle I currently own? It's very difficult to pick one vehicle from the Vintage Collection because there have been some pretty decent ones, especially since the Vintage Collection came back. You know, you've got the Skiff, for example. That's a very cool vehicle, especially as that we can do so much with it with characters that we have now. And also, if you look at some of the larger vehicles like the Millennium Falcon and the AT-AT, things like that, you know, they're quite easy picks, aren't they? But I'm going to pick the Imperial tank because I love the sort of mid-scale vehicles. They're easy to display. This one is packed with details, packed with paint applications. I love the style of the commander and driver that they made for Rogue One. Really like the style of those, you know, troopers. So they go really well with it as well. And I'm a big fan of Rogue One in general. And I'm hoping to see more of this vehicle in the second season of Andor as well. And I do believe that Disney put out an official poster for Andor Season 2. And the bottom right-hand corner of that poster is these Imperial tanks. So I'm hoping to see more of those. And maybe they'll reissue it. Who knows, man? They might do that because it is getting a little bit more expensive on the secondary market these days. But I was always really impressed with this vehicle. As I said, lots of detail, lots of playability, and yeah, I'm going to pick that. Jeffrey Horner says, hey, boss, question for next week. If Hasbro does offer the Marauder as a HasLab, do you think that Hunter should be updated as well or just reissued? So first up, I don't think the next HasLab is going to be the Marauder. A pretty prominent person in the Star Wars collecting community almost confirmed that basically in the comments of a thread on the Rebel Scum forums. When we talk about Hunter, absolutely not. I do not think he needs to be updated. I think he is a perfectly good figure as he is. Reissued, I don't think he needs reissuing at this point in time either, because essentially you can still pick this guy up pretty cheap on the secondary market. I think I saw him as low as $18, and I'm pretty sure he ended up in Ross or Ollie's, one of the two, for a short period of time anyway. You could pick him up pretty cheap. What I could see Hasbro doing is, you know, repainting him into the Season 2 paint scheme of the armor. I could definitely see them doing that. But of course, you know, we just need to get the others in the line because this guy is still pretty lonely. So if they're not going to be doing the HasLab Marauder, then they need to get them out individually and, you know, hurry up about it as well. As I said, this guy is on his own and it is a complete waste. Edward McCoy says, hey, big question for next week. Why do you think Hasbro doesn't add more swappable hands to the figures? Seems kind of random. Some regular figures will come with effects or extra hands like Dooku or Vader or even Ponda Baba, but others don't. Personally, I'd love to get some more swappable hands for Jedi, characters like the Cave of Evil Luke, for example, came with awesome extra hands. Keep up the great work. Your videos always help me get through my long Sundays at work. Cheers, buddy. I appreciate that. So I think when you say random figures that do come with those swappable hands, I don't actually think they are that random, because they are often of characters that kind of need that swappable hand. So for example, Ponda Baba has his arm cut off, Vader has his hand chopped off, you know, with Dooku and the Emperor you have them with the Force lightning, things like that. So you kind of need those. I think with the Cave of Evil Luke as another example, that's, you know, a great one to have, because you almost kind of want that sort of palm facing Force gesture type hand, don't you? And there probably are more characters in the Star Wars universe that, you know, have used sort of prominent hand gestures in certain films and TV shows and things like that. But I think ultimately it comes down to cost. And if you want separate hands sculpted and tooled up and things like that, then ultimately it's going to affect the cost, and they'll have to make savings elsewhere. So I think they kind of have got the balance right at this moment in time, in terms of, you know, making sure that we do have the swappable hands for the characters that really actually need it. Of course, we all want more, don't we? You know, for example, I don't know, characters that hold a lightsaber as well as a blaster. Sometimes, you know, that one hand that might be sculpted in such a way to hold the blaster doesn't necessarily hold the lightsaber too well. Maybe that could be a thing, but all in all, I think they've kind of got the balance right at this moment in time. Farrell Kappa says, hi dude, hope you're well. Thank you for the awesome content. Question for next week: is Hasbro allergic to great and simple ideas? Seriously, creating clone army builder packs seems like a no-brainer, especially with the new definitive sculpts. They could literally work through the most popular battalions, etc. All we want are clones with a bit of paint. Come on, Hasbro, sort it out. Buddy, I have to completely agree with you. I think most people watching this channel know that I do love clone troopers, and I would buy all of the battalions if Hasbro would, you know, release those in Army Builder 4 packs or single carded, whatever they want to do. With that new awesome sculpt, it does seem like a no-brainer to me. And also, if they did that, then it would stop people going off to AliExpress and buying these bootlegs, which are inferior. They really are. And I would much prefer Hasbro to give us an official release of everything that those AliExpress people are doing. It's leaving money on the table, and it just seems easy for them to do. So yeah, I'm totally with you, buddy. Dan Von Carr says, question for next week: what do you think is more likely? Hasbro releasing an X-Wing repaint for Carson Tavor or any other pilot, or Hasbro doing a new X-Wing mold? So I'm not too sure about a repaint for Carson Tavor necessarily, because I'm not even sure if that figure is going to be able to fit in the cockpit of the current X-Wing mold. I've had a look at mine that I've got on display, and yeah, I'm not too sure. We'll have to wait and see when we get that Carson Tavor. But that Carson Tavor obviously isn't designed for an X-Wing anyway, is it? Because he's not actually in his X-Wing outfit. He has his brown jacket on, which means he's kind of for display outside of the X-Wing. Sure, if that jacket he is wearing is removable, which it kind of looks like it is, obviously we don't have the figure in hand, so we can't tell 100%, then all they really need to do is, you know, sculpt new arms for Carson Tavor in his X-Wing pilot, and Bob's your uncle, you've got a Carson Tavor in his X-Wing pilot outfit. Having said all of that, I'm not too sure if they will give us a new X-Wing, although the previous version does have droopy wing syndrome that we all hate. If they can fix that, I actually think that the current X-Wing is pretty good. And if they announced tomorrow that they were releasing a Partisan X-Wing from Andor, then I would definitely buy that, even if it was still the current mold, because I would love to have that X-Wing in my collection. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see, but I don't really think that they're going to be doing a new mold of the X-Wing anytime soon. And we'll have to wait and see if that Carson Tavor figure even actually fits in the current one as well. Obi-Wan Kennedy says, question for next week: I just recently got back into Star Wars 3.75-inch collecting after being away from the hobby for several years. I'm very overwhelmed by the amount of things I've missed out on. I collect exclusively OT, as that's what I've always enjoyed the most. Is there anywhere you'd recommend starting, or any figures, items you'd recommend getting now before they shoot up on aftermarket, and any advice you have for somewhat newer collector like myself? I've already picked up the most recent A New Hope Leia, Luke, R2-D2, Vader, and a couple of Stormtroopers. I also went back and bought myself a Slave 1, and it's a vehicle I've always wanted when I was a kid. Thank you in advance, and thank you for all you do on YouTube for the community. Your channel is always one of my favorites back when I collected regularly, and it's great to come back now and see you're still keeping the hobby alive. Love to see it. Thank you, buddy. So yeah, where would I start? I would start by looking at you know, any of the checklists that are out there. So I have one on my website. There is always a link in my video descriptions to that checklist. and just take a look at the things that you may have missed out on. The only thing that I can really think of that's OT related that's going up a little bit in price is the Darth Vader from Return of the Jedi, the Death Star 2 version of Darth Vader. That one seems to be quite pricey now on the secondary market, or at least it's getting there anyway, certainly in the UK. I think everything else you probably won't have too much of a problem getting. TVC 2.0 in general, apart from a couple of figures here and there, are pretty easy to get hold of these days. You know, they don't really command too much on the secondary market like TVC 1.0 figures do and have done in the past. So I think you'll be okay with that. But yeah, I would start with looking at the checklist, look at the things that you've missed out on. You seem to have picked up a few of them there. There are some Return of the Jedi 40th anniversary things out there, like the bunker and the speeder bike that you might want to pick up. But again, I really don't think you're going to have too much trouble picking those up for in and around retail price. Nicholas Hallow says, question for next week. There's always a lot of discussion of so-called deluxe figures and the packaging. How would you feel about a large bubble on a standard card like the Sith Trooper Armory pack, and Hasbro could just slap a nice Starburst sticker on the bubble saying deluxe? That way they can use the standard card size and also differentiate the product for retail. I think Hasbro said that there wouldn't be enough room for a good image on the card, but I'm sure a good graphic artist could make it work. Cheers. Yeah, I don't really believe that whole thing about the image. This one looks okay to me, and that one for the Mando was pretty good as well. So that kind of thing I don't really think is an issue. I think maybe from a retail perspective, you know, are these different enough from your standard cards? I think that's the question, and only Hasbro and the retailers really know the answer for that. I think this one was a Amazon exclusive, so we can't really count that one, and I can't really remember the details surrounding that Mando and Grogu. I think they described that as a build-up pack rather than deluxe. Did they not at the time? I think this is the true first deluxe that we had, and as I said, I'm pretty sure that was an Amazon exclusive, so maybe they could get away with it as it's just Amazon and it's not swinging on a peg necessarily. But for me, I'm with you. I would prefer them to be on this size card with an oversized bubble. I think that's a win for the collectors. As I said, I'm just not 100% sure if that's even possible with retail. You know, it's not really something that I sort of know too much about, and it's, as I said, probably only Hasbro and the retailers really know exactly what that is. Steve DeBursa says, hi BB, great show as always, and thanks for all the content this week. It's been a busy one. Question from me, do you expect the reveals at Star Wars Celebrations will likely focus on A New Hope, or do you think we may have some stuff from Revenge of the Sith? In light of the news that there will be a Black Series exclusive at Star Wars Celebrations, do you think there will be anything for the Vintage Collection collectors? Thanks as always, Steve. So it is a little bit worrying about the exclusive for the Vintage Collection, whether there will be one. I'm kind of thinking that there won't be at this point, which is a bit of a shame, and that's because I did get an email from the sort of, you know, PR people at Disney, and they were listing all of the exclusives that are going to be at Celebration, and the Black Series one was on there amongst other things that aren't Hasbro, and there wasn't anything for the Vintage Collection. So if there is going to be something, it will be revealed quite late in the day. I don't know how people are going to really feel about that. Some people don't like these con exclusives at all, do they? So who knows on that front. In terms of the reveals for Celebration, I don't think it's going to focus on one particular era of Star Wars. This is Star Wars Celebration, and I feel that it will encompass quite a lot actually, including some stuff from the Disney era of Star Wars. I think we're going to see that. That doesn't mean to say that we won't see anything from the original trilogy or Return to Tatooine. I think we'll at least see one thing from that. But apart from that, I think there'll be like a little bit for everyone in terms of what they'll reveal. But we'll have to see what they do for that. Dean Lee says, hi Boss, question next week. If you could have any unmade TVC playset, what ones would you want? Cheers. Oh man, there are quite a few out there, aren't there, that I could think of from, you know, from the prequel trilogy. But I think I've answered this question before, but it was quite a long time ago now. And I always think back to a Lego set that I had from Rogue One, which I really did enjoy. And that was like the bunker attack from Rogue One. And that for me would open up quite a lot of characters that we need. You know, you've got the Pathfinders, the Rebel Pathfinders, you've got Pow, we've got Baze Malbus, of course. We've got all of the Shore Troopers for that scene. We've got those, no problem. But I think like sort of bunker attack for Rogue One would be a pretty cool playset, and that's that's one that I hope that they do in the future. 1992 Apocalypse says, if HasLab did a slightly larger scale version of the gunship we already have, I would definitely buy 2, possibly 3. The version with the ball turrets always looked funny to me. The turrets looked like they were too big compared to the size of the ship. Also, do you think that many collectors would prefer going back to the old style deluxe boxes instead of the oversized bubble cards? I would certainly prefer the old deluxe boxes. I know they were not favoured by a lot of collectors in the past, but I fear our complaints may have pushed us into the situation with the oversized bubble deluxe cards. I especially don't like the fact that they are numbered, meaning if it went on my peg wall, it would offset the symmetry of my display. Yeah, that is the problem with them, isn't it? But the way I feel about those deluxe boxes that we had for figures is that that was done in the time that they were thinking about moving to plastic-free packaging, and even the inside of those deluxe boxes, you know, the figure is held in by a piece of cardboard and the accessories are in a little baggie. So you can really see that that was at the era of plastic-free packaging, and luckily they didn't go the whole hog. And now they're kind of sort of reversing that, aren't they? They're kind of saying, you know, the vintage collection shouldn't really be about those boxes where you can't see the figure, and they should be on bubbles. And you're right, unfortunately, they have gone down the route of those bigger cards, which I'm not a fan of. And going back to the previous question, what they should do is go back to this if they possibly can, keeping it that size card with just a slightly larger bubble for the accessories, or putting the accessories behind the figure and making the bubble stick out just a little bit more, whatever it might be. But as I said, I feel that those old deluxe boxes were definitely a plastic free packaging era. That's when they started, and you know, thank God we didn't go down the full route of that. In terms of the gunship, totally agree with you. As much as I like the Vintage Collection one, it is an old sculpt mold, isn't it? And I always felt that those turrets did look a bit oversized as well. So I'm fully with you. If they were ever to do a gunship again, it does need to be upscaled, in my opinion. All right then, guys, that's it for this week's episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please leave your questions in the comment section of this video to keep this series going. Thanks for watching, everybody, and thank you once again to my Patreon supporters and channel members for the extra support. It is greatly appreciated. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we shall see you on the next one.